It was an accident, wasn't it, darling? My father asked my sister as I bled on the floor. In that moment, I realized with chilling certainty he wasn't asking a question. He was giving an order and scripting the perfect cover-up. My name is Marianne Thorne, and I am 48 years old. The scent of old money, oak barrels, and California poppies that was the smell of my world until it was replaced by the metallic tang of my own blood. I lay crumpled at the base of the grand stone staircase in our family's Napa Valley winery, a searing pain shooting up from my leg, which was bent at an angle nature never intended. Through a swimming haze, I saw her. My younger sister, Loretta, standing 5 steps above me, her perfectly manicured hands still slightly outstretched from the push. Her lips, the color of our finest Cabernet, curled into a smirk that was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Legacy has a price, Mar," she whispered, the words like ice shards in the warm, grape-scented air. Our parents, Richard and Catherine, rushed past me, their footsteps echoing on the terracotta tiles. They didn't come to me. They went straight to her, wrapping their arms around Loretta as she began to sob on cue, a magnificent performance of shock and horror. "It was an accident, wasn't it, darling?" My father's voice was tight with panic, not for my shattered bones, but for the potential stain on their pristine family portrait. I tried to scream the truth, but the agony stole my breath. That's when my vision cleared just enough to see him. In the upstairs gallery, half hidden behind a marble bust of our grandfather, was Leo Loretta's own teenage son, his phone held steady, its small red recording light, a tiny burning star in my darkening world. Before I tell you how that little red light threatened to burn down a 40-year dynasty, I have a question for you. If you have ever felt like the odd one out in your own family, do me a favor and hit that like button, just a quiet little signal to let me know I'm not alone tonight. That little red light didn't capture a beginning, it captured an ending. The end of 40 years of secrets festering beneath the idyllic surface of Thorn Crest Vineyard. From the outside, we were the envy of Napa Valley. Our estate sprawled over 300 sun-drenched acres, the vines heavy with grapes that produced award-winning Cabernet Sauvignon. Our family name was etched onto every bottle, a symbol of legacy and quality. But within the stone walls of our home, that legacy was a poison. I learned early on that my role was to be the sturdy rootstock, while my sister Loretta, 3 years younger, was the beautiful, perfect grape. At 45, she was still effortlessly charming, with a laugh that could disarm wine critics and a smile that convinced distributors to double their orders. She was the face of Thorn Crest. I was the hands. I knew the soil, the chemistry of fermentation, the delicate balance of a perfect blend. The pattern was set when we were teenagers. I spent a whole summer developing a new rosé, a crisp, dry blush that was completely unique. It won a regional gold medal. But at the celebratory dinner, when the announcer called my name, my father stood up and said there'd been a mistake. He guided Loretta to the stage, praising her for her exquisite palate and vision, because she had picked out the pale pink color for the label. As they posed for pictures, my mother whispered to me, "Your job is to make the family look good, Marianne, not to be the one who looks good." Her words stung more than any failure ever could. What time is it where you are in the world right now? Whatever the hour, if you've ever poured your soul into something just to watch someone else take the credit, type "my time to shine" in the comments below. Let's create a space to acknowledge the work that goes unseen. My mother's words became the unofficial family motto, the invisible ink on every contract I ever signed and every business deal I ever closed. My value was functional, not personal. When I earned my degree in viticulture and enology from UC Davis, one of the best programs in the country, my parents offered a distracted, "That's nice, dear," over dinner before changing the subject to Loretta's upcoming trip to Italy to find inspiration. 3 months later, when Loretta got a 2-sentence mention in a local luxury magazine for the dress she wore to a charity auction, my mother had it professionally framed and hung it in the main tasting room. The disparities grew as we got older. I spent 5 years orchestrating a complex deal with a nationwide distributor, a move that tripled our profits and put Thorn Crest on the map internationally. My success was met not with celebration, but with the immediate expectation of even greater returns. The next year, when Loretta decided she wanted to convert a historic stone cellar into a meditation and yoga retreat, my father allocated nearly $250,000 to her vanity project without blinking. The retreat failed within 18 months, the financial loss quietly absorbed into the company's operating budget. I once tried to raise my concerns with our family's longtime attorney, a man I'd known since I was a child. He listened patiently before patting my hand and saying, "Marianne, every great company needs its workhorse and its show horse. You and your sister simply have different, but equally valuable, roles." The message was clear. My job was to pull the cart, and hers was to look pretty wearing the ribbons. I was the engine of the dynasty, but I was never, ever meant to be its queen. For years, I accepted this dynamic. I found a quiet satisfaction in the work itself, in the rhythm of the seasons, the scent of the harvest, and the deep, ruby color of a perfectly aged wine. I told myself it was enough. But everything changed this past spring, the day my grandfather, Arthur, suffered a massive stroke. At 92, he was the heart and soul of Thorncrest, the man who had planted the first vines with his own 2 hands. He was also the only one who ever truly saw me. He'd find me in the cellars, taste a new blend, and with a simple nod, convey more pride than my parents had shown me in my entire life. Now, he was confined to his bed in the West Wing, unable to speak, his brilliant mind trapped behind vacant eyes. The family gathered in the grand library, ostensibly to discuss his care, but the conversation quickly turned. My father, looking grim, brought up the vineyard charter, the master document my grandfather had drafted decades ago that dictated the vineyard's line of succession. He mentioned wanting to make adjustments. My father said carefully, that was all Loretta needed to hear. "I think the primary ownership should fall to me," she announced, examining her reflection in the polished mahogany table. "My social connections are what keep this brand relevant. Marianne is a wonderful manager, but she lacks vision." I was stunned into silence as she and my mother began discussing which of grandfather's antiques would look best in Loretta's San Francisco apartment, all while he was lying helpless just 1 floor above us. "Can we not do this now?" I finally interjected, my voice tight. "We should be talking about his comfort, not his furniture." My mother gave me a withering look. "Don't be so sentimental, Marianne. We're just being practical. It's a horrible question, but it's a real one. If you were forced to make a choice, would you press 1 inch the comments for protecting a family's financial legacy, or 2 for protecting a dying loved one's dignity? I'd be interested to see what you all think." I couldn't listen anymore. The air in the library was thick with greed, and I felt like I was choking on it. I stood up, the legs of my chair scraping a sharp protest against the floor, and walked out. I needed to see my grandfather, to be in a room where love wasn't a currency. I had just reached the first landing of the grand staircase when I heard Loretta's footsteps behind me. "Where do you think you're going?" she hissed, her voice stripped of its usual honeyed warmth. "Going to whisper more poison in his ear? Trying to make sure he signs everything over to St. Marianne, the martyr of the vineyard?" I turned to face her, my hand gripping the cool, smooth oak of the banister. "He's our grandfather, Loretta. Not a balance sheet. Have you forgotten that?" Something in her face twisted, a flash of pure, unadulterated rage. "He was going to give it all to you," she spat, her voice a low, dangerous tremor. "The controlling interest. The charter. Everything. He told me last week. He said you had earned it, that you were the true heart of this place." I stared at her, stunned. I had known nothing about this. It was the one thing she could never tolerate, not my success, but my validation from the one person whose opinion mattered most. I didn't know," I stammered, shaking my head as I turned to continue up the stairs. "I swear." And that's when it happened. Her denial, my shock, it was the perfect moment of my vulnerability. I felt her hands, hard and deliberate, shove the center of my back. There was a sickening moment of weightlessness, a silent scream trapped in my throat as my feet left the solid ground. My hands scrabbled for the railing but found only air. The world became a brutal, tumbling kaleidoscope of stone and pain. My shoulder hit first, then my hip. A sharp, echoing crack resounded through the foyer as my leg bent backwards over a step, and then, finally, my head connected with the carved newel post at the bottom. The world didn't go black. It exploded into light. The brilliant light slowly receded, leaving me with a fractured, swimming view of the high, vaulted ceiling of our foyer. The pain was a living thing, a roaring fire that consumed my leg and sent waves of nausea through my entire body. I could hear footsteps, frantic and loud on the terracotta tiles. The library doors had been thrown open. For a split second, a primal, childish hope flickered within me, they're coming for me. But the footsteps rushed past. Through the fog of shock, I saw my sister's face come into focus above me. The rage was gone, replaced by a chillingly serene look of triumph. She leaned down, the scent of her expensive perfume making me want to gag. "Legacy has a price," she whispered again, her voice a silken thread of poison. Then, her expression crumpled. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifyingly convincing. Her eyes filled with tears, her mouth opened in a silent scream, just as my parents rounded the newel post. They didn't even seem to register my broken body on the floor. It was as if I were a piece of fallen luggage. My mother rushed to Loretta, who had strategically collapsed onto the bottom step. "Oh, my darling girl, what happened?" she cried, stroking Loretta's hair. My father took off his cashmere jacket and wrapped it around Loretta's shaking shoulders. "It was an accident, wasn't it, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice urgent, not with a question, but with a command. "Marianne was clumsy, she tripped, and you couldn't catch her." "Is that what happened?" I tried to form a word, any word, number. But all that escaped my lips was a guttural groan. In that moment, watching them comfort the author of my pain, I understood. I wasn't their injured daughter, I was a problem. A messy, inconvenient stain on the perfect portrait of their family. The world began to shrink, the edges of my vision tunneling into gray. I was drowning in the pain, but even more so in the certainty that they would bury the truth of this moment, just as they had buried every other truth for the past 40 years. Their narrative was already being written. Then, through the fog, a new sound cut through the coached sobs of my sister. The distant wail of a siren, growing steadily closer. The paramedics were a whirlwind of calm efficiency. As they began assessing me, cutting away my pant leg to get to the horrifying angle of my shin, I could hear my father speaking to the lead medic. His voice was a smooth, practiced baritone, the one he used with bankers and journalists. "A terrible accident," he was saying. "My eldest, Marianne. She's always been a bit unsteady. Her sister, Loretta, tried to catch her, but she just went down too fast." The lie was so seamless, so polished. Despair washed over me again. But then, something happened. A female paramedic, whose name tag read Sarah, was stabilizing my neck. Her hands were gentle but firm. As she worked, her eyes weren't on me, but were scanning the scene, taking in the cavernous foyer. My parents huddled around Loretta, and then she looked up. Her gaze drifted to the upstairs gallery, to the exact spot where I'd last seen Leo. He was still there, a ghost in the shadows, his face pale with terror. Sarah's eyes locked on him for a fraction of a second, and in that instant, I know she saw the phone still clutched in his hand. Leo flinched and darted back out of sight. Sarah leaned close to me, ostensibly to check my pupils. "We're going to take good care of you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But it was the look in her eyes, a quick, sharp flicker of knowing that screamed louder than any siren. She knew. It's amazing how hope can arrive in the quietest moments. Think about a time when a complete stranger's small act of kindness changed your day, and share that memory in the comments below. Let's fill this space with proof that goodness exists, even in the middle of a nightmare. The next 2 days were a blur of morphine, surgery to set my tibia with a titanium rod, and the sterile, impersonal silence of a private hospital room. The scent of grapes and oak had been replaced by the smell of antiseptic and bleach. I drifted in and out of consciousness, clinging to the memory of the paramedic's eyes. On the 3rd morning, my family arrived. They didn't look like they were visiting an invalid, they looked like they were arriving for a corporate merger. My father was in a tailored suit, my mother in pearls, and Loretta in a somber navy dress that somehow made her look more beautiful and tragic. They carried an absurdly large bouquet of white lilies whose cloying scent immediately filled the small room. "Oh, sweetheart," my mother began, fussing with my blanket. "The doctors mentioned the concussion could cause some memory gaps. You might feel a bit confused. Loretta hovered near the door, dabbing at perfectly dry eyes. I keep replaying it in my head, she whispered. If only I'd been a second faster. I just stared at them, the fog of the painkillers beginning to clear. My father, ever the pragmatist, got straight to the point. He placed his leather briefcase on my bedside table and clicked it open. Marianne, the hospital and our insurance carrier need a formal statement about the incident, he said, his voice smooth and low. He slid a document and a pen onto my tray. This just confirms what we all know, that it was an unfortunate accident. We need to sign this to prevent any unnecessary bureaucratic involvement. I looked from his impassive face to Loretta's tear-stained performance, then down at the paper. I saw the words accidental fall in neat, corporate typeface. I pushed the tray away with my good hand. No, I said, my voice raspy. It wasn't an accident. She pushed me. The air in the room instantly turned to ice. My father's face went rigid. We will not tolerate these hysterical accusations, he said, his voice dangerously low. We will come back when the medication has worn off and you are thinking more rationally. They swept out of the room, leaving a vortex of silence and the suffocating scent of lilies behind them. In that sterile quiet, for the first time, a sliver of doubt crept in. Was it possible they were right? That the pain, the shock, the medication had somehow twisted my memory? I felt my resolve beginning to fray. An hour later, there was a soft knock on my door. A woman in civilian clothes poked her head in. It was Sarah, the paramedic. Sorry to bother you off duty, she said with a small, kind smile. I was visiting another patient on this floor and wanted to see how you were. She came in and closed the door quietly behind her. I have a son who's 16, she said, her voice dropping. I recognized the look on that boy's face upstairs. It was terror. He found my name on the public incident report and emailed me this morning. He said he was more afraid of what would happen if he stayed silent. She held out her phone. He asked me to show you this. My hand trembled as I took it. The video was shaky, filmed from a teenager's perspective. I saw my own back, and Loretta's face, contorted with a rage I'd never seen so nakedly before. I heard her voice, sharp and clear. He was going to give it all to you. And then I saw it. The shove. It wasn't a stumble or an accident. It was a deliberate, forceful, two-handed push. The video captured one more second after I disappeared from view. A flash of pure, triumphant satisfaction on my sister's face before the mask of horror descended. A wave of nauseating, clarifying relief washed over me. I wasn't crazy, it was real. Seeing that video was like taking my first breath after being held underwater. If you've ever had a moment where your own truth was finally validated after a long period of doubt, I want you to just type the number 1 in the comments below. You don't need to say anything else. That one will be our silent symbol of vindication. Clarity is a powerful fuel. Armed with the video, which Sarah had helped me secure in a cloud account only I could access, I made my first move. I called Mr. Albright, our family's attorney. I didn't make threats. I simply stated the facts in a calm, level voice. An assault occurred on the Thorncrest property which resulted in grievous bodily harm, I said. I have video evidence of the event, and I will be retaining my own legal counsel. The silence on the other end of the line was more eloquent than any words. The response came that night. My parents appeared in my hospital room doorway, and this time there were no pretenses. No flowers, no hushed tones of concern. Their faces were grim, hardened masks of control. Loretta was not with them. We know about the video, my father said, his voice flat and cold. We have had a long talk with your nephew. His disloyalty has been addressed. The chilling finality in his tone made my blood run cold. He placed a thick document, freshly printed, on my bedside table. You have a choice, he continued, as if discussing a business negotiation. Option 1. You sign this non-disclosure agreement, you delete the video permanently, and you publicly corroborate the story of an accidental fall. We, in turn, will ensure Loretta gets help. Your medical bills will be covered, and your place in this family and at the vineyard will remain. We will forget this unfortunate incident ever happened. He paused, his eyes like steel. Option 2. You refuse. You pursue this vendetta. And we will disown you. We will remove you from the charter, from the will, from the family entirely. We will release a statement regarding your emotional instability following your concussion. We will use every dollar and every connection we have to ensure that no one in this valley ever hires you, speaks to you, or does business with you again. This vineyard is a legacy, Marianne. It is bigger than you, and it is bigger than your feelings. Do not force our hand. After they left, the room felt heavy, the air thick with unspoken threats. The document on my nightstand seemed to radiate a cold energy. For the first time, I felt the true weight of my family's empire, and it was threatening to crush me. They had left me utterly alone, convinced that without their name and their money, I was nothing. My hand shook as I scrolled through my phone's contacts, past lawyers and doctors, until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Javier. He had been my grandfather's vineyard manager for 50 years before retiring, a man whose hands were permanently stained with the juice of 1,000 harvests. I told him everything, my voice cracking. He listened without interruption. When I finished, his voice was a low, steady rumble. I am not surprised, Mija, he said. Your grandfather, he saw the rot in the vine. He told me a month ago, the vineyard needs a soul, not just a pretty label. He knew you were its soul. You do what is right. I will tell the truth for him. His words were a balm on my fractured spirit. The next day, another unexpected call came. It was from Elena Garcia, the owner of the vineyard that bordered ours to the south. We had been friendly competitors for years. Marianne, she said, her voice direct. I heard about your accident. I'm calling to tell you that 2 years ago, Loretta tried to sabotage my distribution deal by telling my partners I was using illegal pesticides. It was a vicious lie that almost cost me my business. I never had concrete proof it was her, but I know. If you need someone to speak to your integrity or hers, I am here. In the space of 24 hours, I had gone from being an outcast to a woman with allies. One who held the vineyard's past, and one who represented its present. The foundation of my father's threat had begun to crack. It's incredible how strength can come from the most unexpected places. Think of a person in your life who isn't family by blood, but is absolutely family by choice. If you're comfortable, just type their first name or initials in the comments. Let's take a moment to celebrate the people who choose to stand by us. The preliminary hearing took place 3 weeks later in a sterile, wood-paneled conference room at the county courthouse. I sat beside my new lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Diane Chen, my leg propped up on a special stool, the ache in my bones, a dull, constant reminder of what was at stake. Across the long mahogany table, my family sat with Mr. Albright. They looked like a portrait of wealth and sorrow, a united front of tailored suits and quiet dignity. Mr. Albright spoke first, his voice smooth as aged port. He painted a picture of a close-knit family, reeling from a tragic, emotional misunderstanding. He argued that Loretta, in a moment of sisterly frustration, had merely reached out, and I had unfortunately lost my balance. He called the video a slanderous, out-of-context recording. My lawyer didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. When he was finished, she simply turned to the judge and said, "Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself." The lights in the room dimmed, and the video played on a large screen at the front of the room. The silence was absolute. The shaky footage, the raw sound of Loretta's enraged voice. He was going to give it all to you. And the brutal, undeniable physics of the shove filled the space. But the most damning part was the final second. That fleeting, triumphant smirk on Loretta's face before she arranged it into a mask of theatrical horror. I heard my mother let out a small, strangled gasp. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I thought it might crack. Loretta simply stared at the screen, her expression blank. Miss Chen wasn't finished. She calmly submitted 2 sworn affidavits, one from Javier, testifying to my grandfather's intentions to change the charter due to his concerns about Loretta's character, and one from Elena Garcia, detailing Loretta's pattern of malicious and calculated deceit. The perfect family portrait was shattering in real time, right before the eyes of the law. When the video ended, the judge, a woman in her late 60s with eyes that seemed to miss nothing, slowly took off her glasses. She looked at Loretta, not with anger, but with a kind of weary disappointment. Mr. Albright, she said, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of absolute authority. I have seen emotional moments between siblings. That was not one of them. That was a calculated, malicious act of violence. She looked down at the documents before her. Based on the unambiguous video evidence and corroborating testimony, I find probable cause for felony assault. This case will be handed over to the district attorney's office with my recommendation that they pursue it to the fullest extent. She wasn't done. Bail is set at $200,000. Furthermore, I am issuing an emergency protective order, effective immediately. Loretta, Richard, and Catherine Thorne are to have no contact whatsoever with Marianne Thorne. You will not call her, you will not write to her, and you will not come within 500 feet of her, her home, or her place of business. My father shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is a private family matter. The judge's gavel came down with a crack that made him flinch. This ceased to be a family matter the moment your daughter was thrown down a flight of stairs, Mr. Thorne. This is now a criminal matter. As a bailiff led a stunned Loretta from the room, she turned and looked at me. There was no remorse in her eyes, only a cold, bottomless well of hatred, the promise of future pain. But as my lawyer wheeled me out into the hallway, I didn't feel fear. I felt light. The massive, suffocating weight of my family's name was finally, irrevocably lifted. Justice doesn't always feel like a victory parade. Sometimes it's just quiet. If you have ever had to make the painful choice to cut ties with someone for your own peace and safety, you don't have to share the story. Just type "I chose me" in the comments. It's a quiet declaration of self-worth that we all deserve to make. That hearing was 18 months ago. The legal battle that followed was brutal but brief. Faced with the video, Loretta took a plea deal, 5 years of felony probation, a significant fine, and court-mandated therapy. The protective order was made permanent. My parents paid for everything and released a sterile press statement about a private family health matter. The Thorncrest brand took a massive hit. But the most significant change happened quietly, in my grandfather's sunlit room, 2 months before he passed away. He had a brief period of lucidity, a final, precious gift. With Javier and a notary by his side, he signed the amended vineyard charter. He left 51% the controlling interest to me. The rest was placed in a trust for his great-grandson, Leo. My parents and Loretta were left with a token inheritance, but zero control. His last act on this earth was to restore the soul of the vineyard. My own healing has been a slow, arduous harvest. Physical therapy was agonizing, and I now walk with a beautiful, hand-carved cane made from a 100-year-old grapevine. The limp is a reminder, not of my weakness, but of my survival. The emotional scars are deeper. I work with a therapist every week, learning to untangle the knots of a lifetime of gaslighting, to trust my own voice. And the vineyard is healing too. I've started a profit-sharing program for the field workers Javier hired 30 years ago. And Leo, my brave nephew, spends his summers with me. He was disowned by his mother for his act of courage, so I am making a new home for him here, among the vines. He is learning the business from the soil up, his presence a quiet promise of a better future. I'm telling you this story tonight from the veranda of the main house, the house I grew up in. The sun is setting over the Mayacamas Mountains, painting the rows of vines in hues of gold and deep violet. For years, I believed that legacy was this land, this name, this dynasty my grandfather built. I thought family was an unbreakable bond of blood, a debt you owed regardless of the cost to your own soul. I was wrong. The push down those stairs broke my leg, but it also broke the spell. I learned that family isn't something you are born into, it's something you build. It's the quiet loyalty of an old friend like Javier. It's the unexpected integrity of a competitor like Elena. It's the fierce, protective courage of a boy like Leo. My family is the one I have chosen, the one that is built on respect and truth, not on obligation and secrets. And legacy? It's not the name on the bottle. It's the quality of what's inside. It's the character of the people who tend the vines and the honesty of the story you tell. My father was willing to sacrifice his daughter for his brand. I am learning to build a brand that is worthy of my own truth. Losing the family I was born with was a grief I still carry. It is a phantom limb that aches when the weather turns cold, But the truth, I've discovered, is a much lighter burden than a beautiful lie. The true inheritance my grandfather left me wasn't the vineyard. It was the permission to finally, fully, be myself. My story is set in a vineyard, with struggles over land and legacy that might feel a world away from your own. But I know that the heart of this story isn't unique to me. So many of us are handed a role in our families: the responsible one, the difficult one, the peacemaker, the invisible one. We learn our lines and play our part for so long that we forget we never auditioned for it in the first place. We endure the 1,000 tiny paper cuts of being misunderstood, of having our successes minimized and our feelings dismissed. We tell ourselves that keeping the peace is more important than speaking our truth. That fall down the stairs was the most painful and terrifying moment of my life. But it was also the moment I stopped falling silently. It was the moment I realized that my truth was not a weapon intended to hurt my family, but a shield to protect myself. Your healing, your truth, will have its own shape and its own time. It may not come from a dramatic, public event, but from a quiet, internal decision to no longer accept a story that diminishes you. It starts the moment you decide that your peace is worth more than their comfort. It's about building a life where you are valued for who you are, not for the role you are assigned to play. And you deserve that. We all deserve that. This channel is a place where we bear witness to each other's truths, big and small. If this story resonated with you, and if you believe in the quiet courage it takes to reclaim your own narrative, then please subscribe and join this community. Let's be a place where every story is heard and every voice matters. Thank you for sharing this part of my journey with me. Be gentle with yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.